Hello folks, my name is Dr. Zac Hildenbrand. I'm here with my colleague Dr. Kevin Schug, and we are the Collaborative Laboratories for Environmental Analysis and Remediation at the University of Texas at Arlington. We're coming to you from the Responsible Shale Energy Extraction Conference, which is a very unique event bringing together scientists, concerned citizens, operators, regulators, and technology companies to have an honest series of conversations about environmental stewardship in shale energy.
We'd really like to thank the support of the Cynthia and George Mitchell Foundation and Earth Day Texas for allowing us to put on this event. We believe that this content that we're going to be providing to those who haven't been able to attend is going to help answer and educate a lot of questions surrounding responsible shale energy extraction. So we hope you enjoy the content.
Folks, thank you very much for joining us in this session. My name is Dr. Zac Hildenbrand. I'm here with my good friend and colleague, Dr. Kevin Schug. And we're going to talk a little bit about fracking or hydraulic fracturing, unconventional oil and gas development, but more specifically giving a wrap-up of a conference that we just had. It was called Responsible Shale Energy Extraction. It was sponsored by the good folks at Earth Day Texas and the Cynthia and George Mitchell Foundation. But we'd be remiss without getting into a little bit about who we are, what we do, what we're all about. For those of you who know a little bit about oil and gas development, you've probably heard the term fracking. And if you watch the news, you've probably heard stories of people lighting their water on fire, animals dying, people getting sick. You've also heard about the financial implications, jobs, boom and bust. And in 2011, we actually came together, started this research. I'm a biochemist. Kevin is an analytical chemist. He's actually a world-renowned analytical chemist. We came together with a quantitative biologist and a toxicologist, and we had seen all of this news showing all these graphic things about quote-unquote fracking. And we wanted to know for sure, what are they basing these opinions? Are these anecdotal claims, or is this based on peer-reviewed literature? And at the time, as Kevin, as you remember, there just was nothing there. So in a rather unconventional way, no pun intended, we went out and collected our own samples, 100 water wells across the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, from water wells that are overlying what's called the Barnett Shale Formation, where these oil and gas operators are acquiring hydrocarbons, mainly in the form of natural gas. And what we found in that first study was that as your water well got closer to unconventional gas wells that are stimulated by hydraulic fracturing, that the concentrations of heavy metals went up quite considerably. We're talking about things that like arsenic, selenium, strontium, and barium. And so that was really the impetus for us to do more of this research and to answer more of these questions. Folks had concerns about this. It's not just my water, what about the air? What about the soil? What about the human health implications? And so we dived in, and we've now collected over 1,000 samples all across the state of Texas, Louisiana, Pennsylvania. We've done extensive air quality work, and it's not just enough to detect problems, but you also have to provide solutions. And so, Kevin, maybe you can go into this a little bit more about some of our remediation technologies that we're developing here to address these problems.
Sure, yeah, thanks, Zach. This has been a very interesting topic to get into. I didn't originally believe I was going to be doing environmental analysis, but when Zach and a few other friends came to us to talk about developing new methods that could be used to assess the potential environmental impact of oil and gas, it was, in the fact that there was very little research done on the topic, it was an opportunity we couldn't pass up as an important topic to contribute to. There are some significant challenges in doing this work, and I'm sure we're going to allude to those and try to talk about how maybe some of those challenges can be surmounted based on some of the things we learned. Really, we're fortunate to have some support from Earth Day Texas and the Cynthia and George Mitchell Foundation to bring together leading experts to try to create a dialogue. From the very beginning, we've been struck by the notion that this is an extremely polarizing topic. that the vocal sides are the anti-fracking, ban everything side, and the pro-industry. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this side. And the truth of the matter is as in most things that people are very vocal about, is that it probably lies somewhere in the middle. And so the lack of communication was a huge challenge. The notion that we had to support research to do this work was another challenge. You can't go out to the federal government and get money to go do environmental monitoring to see what the impacts of these processes are, and we don't need to go into the reasons why those pathways are more difficult than other research. But the fact of the matter is people are very concerned about the environmental quality. They're concerned about their water. And Zac was doing cancer biology before this, and of course people are concerned about leukemia, but you start messing with water and that hits home for everybody. So it's extremely interesting topic, extremely important topic, extremely polarizing topic, where we wanted to step in and do some meaningful analysis, contribute some meaningful science to the literature to improve the understanding. But at the very beginning of this, and now I finally get to the answer of exactly what you said I might talk about, we don't want to be just going out and saying, here's a problem, here's a problem, here's a problem. We'd like to be able to say, here's a problem, here's a way that we've worked on or we believe that you can use to remediate that problem. Here's a best practice that you can do going forward that would limit the occurrence of that problem. Because like it or not, unconventional oil and gas extraction is not going away. The position that this technology has placed the U.S. in the world, geoeconomics is just too favorable for the country. So we really, instead of spending our efforts trying to figure out how to ban fracking, the more responsible way to approach this is to be working together with the people who are doing it to make sure that they're communicating best practice, they're using best practices, and they're communicating openly with the public, working together with researchers to make sure that things are assessed carefully. I know, using the word regulation is a whole different matter, especially here in Texas, but of course there's also room for that. So, this was a perfect opportunity to bring together people to have a meaningful discussion, people on every sides of this situation, to discuss how we might improve the situation going forward.
Yeah, excellent, and you really hit the nail on the head there in that this is such a polarizing topic. It's such a contentious debate that there really isn't much of a middle ground, and you certainly don't have both sides coming together to have these conversations. And so we always say at our research group that we really don't get very many Christmas cards in the mail. It's not because we don't celebrate Christmas, it's because we're taking a neutral, objective position, which is just not sexy enough to either side of the debate. But in order for science and for the data to speak the loudest and to be the most powerful, you have to be coming at it from a neutral, objective fashion. You have to let the numbers speak for themselves, and then you're able to make powerful inferences. So when we put on this conference, and we called it Responsible Shale Energy Extraction, we got all kinds of pushback. Can this practice be done responsibly? This sounds like an oxymoron. And there's actually no one better than us to actually know what responsible shale energy extraction looks like, because we have seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. We've done work all across the United States where we've seen water that was perfectly pristine now lights on fire. We've seen chemical spills, the implications of that. And that is irresponsible shale energy extraction. But there are tens of thousands of wells all across the United States. There are wells that have perfectly intact casing that's protecting groundwater. There are wells that are not emitting VOCs, that's volatile organic compounds, and noxious fumes into the atmosphere. And so we know the contrast there, and so we wanted to bring that to people's attention. And this is the first year of our conference. I would say that it was a smashing success. We were again able to bring concerned citizens, scientists, operators, oil and gas regulators, in collaboration with technology developers to have an honest series of conversations about environmental stewardship. And certainly there were some contentious moments, there were spirited debates, but anytime you have a venue where you have the Apache Corporation coming in and talking to concerned citizens, you have Rick Perry, and then you have Catherine Hayhoe, who is a world-renowned climate scientist, and technology companies coming in. I mean, to get those all together, to have these discussions, they may not agree all the time, but we're all in the same room, we're all in this together, and I think it was incredibly fruitful. And we had a fairly good showing this year. I think the next year's event's going to be quite substantial. But I think for the concerned citizens that showed up, they learned a lot about what responsible shale energy extraction really means, because we see it so often of irresponsible. I mean, because that's sexy, that gets in the news. But the truth of the matter is, you go out into the hinterlands of these shale formations, and these energy companies are spending a lot of resources, time, effort to do this responsibly, because it's not in their best interest to contaminate the environment. So can you talk a little bit about, the analyses that we have to do? I mean, it's not just a pool stick, for the pH and the hardness of the water. There's a lot that goes into this, isn't there?
I mean, yeah, I'd say really the biggest thing that we've brought to the table is a tailored methodology to really look at a variety of different sample types, whether that's drinking water, surface water, groundwater, soil, air quality, wastewater, building up the technologies to effectively look at these and get reliable results so that we can conduct larger environmental studies and provide meaningful interpretations. I mean, along with being able to do the methodologies, I mean, imagine how difficult it would be if we didn't have the whole team that we have assembled to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a multidisciplinary force, and this research, we've been hamstrung financially. I mean, we don't have the NIH, the NSF to go to, and believe it or not, folks, I mean, we have gotten a large majority of our research funding through concerned citizens who are also mineral rights owners. And it's something that I'm very proud to say. I mean, we've raised over $1.3 million for research from these folks. These are folks that do very well financially because of oil and gas, but they are also very concerned about the environment. And it's because of that support that we've been able to get where we are today, and now be able to develop remediation strategies. And again, even though we are not getting many Christmas cards in the mail, I don't want to seem like we're plugging ourselves, but we were nominated for the Humanity and Science Award, and that's something that our team takes very seriously, a tremendous honor. So neutrality is a tough thing. We know that it's a lonely place, but I think if we stay there, we're going to have all kinds of opportunities to really make a difference in this, and I think we're just getting started.
Yeah, I mean, so we just conducted or concluded a day and a half this Responsible Shale Energy Extraction Conference. This is, kind of the perfect place to be at Earth Day, Texas, to be here after, working 5-6 years in the topic, being extremely careful in maintaining neutrality, thinking about who is okay to accept funds from. Now we finally have gotten in the position where we funded enough, published enough research where and made the case for where this needs to go next. A case in point was a study we did out in West Texas where we were able to look at an area where we knew drilling was going to come into place. And so we were able to take samples before, during, after, over a 12-month period to look at the localized impact of the oil and gas process there, the oil extraction process. This is in the Klein Shale. And the conclusions from that study was that, wow, as soon as that drilling came in, the water quality changed. And we'd be happy to point anybody to that paper if you're interested, as we won't go into the details here. But what also became very apparent was that if we're just kind of going out and timing our sampling every 3-4 months or whatever it is, we have no way to coincide what we're doing with what actual is happening in this very detailed, complicated drilling process that has many different processes and steps involved. So yes, we might find that there's some impact, but we don't know whether they were, drilling at that point, whether they were stimulating at a given point, or whether, at that point they were producing. And so we very quickly made the point to the public in talking about this research that for us to do this effectively, we will need to partner with a producer. And some people, really were skeptical of that step. And we were, eventually approached by Apache, who we think was a very forward-looking move on their part. When we'll talk about more of that in a minute, and work in West Texas. But to finally decide that, or be in a position where we'd established an objectivity and been able to say, okay, now the right thing to do is to collaborate with an operator so that we can get the best resolution in an area, in this case of extremely sensitive ecology, get the best resolution of the timing of the sampling along with the development of the process, and then close communication with that company to make sure that if there was a problem, if we detected some abnormalities, that we could communicate that information. Of course, we're communicating that information to the public, to the landowners. I mean, there's no part of this relationship that stops us from communicating normally.
Yep, absolutely.
And so now we're taking those steps, and it's those steps that really bring us to the point of being able to bring people together at like an Earth Day, to get the support of the Mitchell Foundation, to be able to now talk about, how can we open the lines of communication. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about the whole West Texas situation and Alpine High.
Yep, absolutely. So I don't know if any of you folks have ever been to the Balmorhea State Park. Yes, okay. The Balmorhea State Park is essentially an oasis in far west Texas, and I would characterize it that it's much akin to Chichen Itza that I've been to in Mexico, Machu Picchu in Peru. It is one of the natural wonders of the world. I was just there earlier this week collecting another series of samples, and it's like swimming in an aquarium. And so when you see that, you can understand the tremendous impetus that there is if an industrial process is going to move in, that we do something about the testing and that we understand what chemicals are in play. And so we have partnered with Apache. We have full autonomy to publish whatever we find. We're working with the community members out there doing an extremely elaborate analysis of organic, inorganic, biological constituents in the water. I mean, we're also collecting samples for hydrocarbons and natural noble gases to look at fluid migration, pathogenic bacteria, and this is probably going to be the most elaborate groundwater monitoring effort that anyone has ever seen, but it speaks to the importance of protecting, the pristine nature of that environment out there. And so it's a tremendous honor to undertake that. And again, it's more or less a microcosm for all of these other communities. I mean, we never disparage anyone's concerns about groundwater contamination or air quality contamination. We take those claims very, very seriously, but we have to go in and collect the data in order to understand whether or not, their perception matches reality. And if it does, then we have to help these folks with remediation efforts. So I'm very happy, confident that, we are headed in the right path. We are bringing all these various perspectives together, trying to think on the same lines. As you mentioned, shale energy extraction is not going anywhere. So if we're going to do it, we absolutely have to do it responsibly, because we cannot compromise the environment for the sake of oil and gas development. And we have the wheels in motion here with this conference that we've had this week, and I'm excited for what the future holds.
Yeah, I mean, getting more and more involved with this and trying to understand what the future holds. I don't know how many of you are familiar with what is going to be happening in the Permian Basin over the next 20 years, but it's likely, and it will turn the U.S. into the largest oil producer. Amazing resources out there that are being developed. Some of the best infrastructure in the world in terms of extraction, just based on the history of oil development in that area. But one thing has become clear is that you cannot go in there and use freshwater resources. There's not enough water to sustain that effort. And it's widely recognized now that if you are a producer who's relying on fresh water, you will be obsolete very quickly. So one of the very interesting aspects that has come out of our ability to do analysis and working together in the industry is that there's a variety of service companies who are being set up to really focus heavily on recycling water. I mean, as part of the conference, we heard some very interesting statistics. You know, in Israel, they recycle some 78% of their water. In the United States, we recycle something like 2% of our water. It is a shame. And in this case, you know, there's a lot of water used in a lot of different, you know, golf courses use a lot of water, paper manufacturing. But in this case, out in West Texas, where we're going to have a major oil boom and production, the effort and the innovation that needs to go into creating recycling technologies and essentially water, we call that, you know, remediation, but water treatment and reuse technologies is going to be substantial. And it's been very interesting to, again, as I mentioned before, not just be at the point where we're trying to go look for problems, but try to go help these companies use our analytical methodologies. We've got some of the best instrumentation in the state of Texas, if not in, you know, the Southwest region at the University of Texas at Arlington, and some great partnerships with those people who supply those instruments. And to be able to use that technology in a meaningful fashion to support these service providers who are going to help the operators do this type of a process in a less impactful fashion, I mean, that's exactly where we thought we needed to be contributing here in a meaningful fashion to try to, you know, limit as much as possible any environmental impacts. And you know, it's you know, it's a big industrial process.
Big industrial process, yeah. And all industrial process have their weak points, their failure points. But if we don't have those conversations about this in an open fashion, and we stick our head in the sand, then the environment will suffer. So it's important that we have those conversations now. On that note, again, I couldn't have said it better myself, Kevin. Are there any questions out there? And then, sir, you had a question as well? Okay.
I think we have just a couple minutes for, yeah, a couple. Let me just, I'll take a quick stab. So I think the question was regarding when you're recycling the water, the disinfection process generating significant amount of different disinfection byproducts. And so, I mean, yeah, very important part of the process is certainly disinfection and removal of microbes. And we've been able to talk to a number of these water recyclers out there, and everybody has a little bit different technology and different possibilities to handle the volume and whatnot. But it's very clear in some of the people that we've talked to where, you know, they have to do multiple treatment steps, combining multiple technologies to, okay, disinfect, but then afterwards come back and make sure they're using things like ozonation or UV treatment in order to knock out the disinfection byproducts. And again, here's a case where, I mean, we won't mention any company names, but you know, they're bringing us in to order to evaluate the process and to help vet that process through there to ensure that they're not supplying a recycled water that would contain significant amounts of harmful materials like that.
And actually, furthermore, to that point, this is not just an issue in the energy sector. We're actually doing some work all across the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex looking at folks who believe they've had compromised water quality from public water supply wells. And they say, my water comes out smelling like pool water and I get a rash. What we've actually been able to determine with our chemical and biological analyses is that they are chlorinating. That chlorination is resulting in significant disinfection byproducts, but it's actually not killing all of the bacteria. The federal and state regulations require them to screen for fecal coliform, E. coli, but they're not screening for pathogenic bacteria. We have an assay where we can screen for thousands of pathogenic bacteria by a protein screen and then confirm that with RNA sequencing. And what we've actually found is these folks, yes, they have water that smells like pool water and they're getting rashes, because they still have pathogenic bacteria there that are resilient to the chlorination process.
I mean, that goes far beyond the whole oil and gas. I mean,
Sure,
this
absolutely.
chlorination is a big time process. So we've just now have a paper out for peer review that would report some of the very first research into that area.
Yes, absolutely. So in that regard, I mean, we have to look at, well, what are better disinfection products? I mean, can we be using UV? And we've got some pretty unique ideas on this that we're about to display very soon. So again, science is to be used to make powerful inferences about making intelligent decisions. And so when we find this data, let's say you have a concern, we do analyses and we make inferences, it's to make this a better process, to make this a better world. And that's what we're all about at Claire, is helping people through science. Sir, you had a question?
Can we take one more? Yeah.
I certainly do not question the integrity or the compassion that you all spoke about the process of thinking. The problem seems to be that your company is engaged in trying to fix a problem once it's happened, or to warn people that the problem is happening. You're talking about using science to responsibly develop energy resources. We need to be looking at processes that don't involve the dangers that involve the hydraulic fracture, because almost every single stage of the fracturing process involves environmental damage and potential human damage. So what we've got here is not a scientific choice. The science is already played. There are many environmental things involved in the fracturing process, as opposed to a lot of the things that are here in this exhibit, solar and wind, that do not involve those things. So I think your premise is wrong when you're talking about fracking is here to stay, and the gas is here to stay. We need to change that premise to look at non-dangerous process.
I don't disagree with you at all. In fact, I wish you would have been there to hear the talk that Catherine Hayhoe gave at our conference this morning on climate change and how the use of fossil fuels should be a bridge. And people call it a bridge, but they're not considering that bridge should be much shorter than it is right now. That bridge we should be using the solar and the wind. We do not disagree with you. What we do believe is that this is an activity that is very prevalent. That's not under our control. This is an activity that causes a lot of content among people on both sides, discontent among both sides of the equation. And all we what we feel like we can do is at least provide a middle ground to hopefully open a communication. And if we can provide some information to help encourage best practices, that can't be a bad thing. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly, and I totally understand your perspective, sir. And our feeling is that we have absolutely no control over regulatory policy, where drilling is going to occur. But if it is going to occur, we would like to think under good conscience that we could help improve the process so that it's having a lesser impact on the environment.
I think we're out of time here, but I appreciate you all sitting here and listening to us, and we're happy to stay after for a couple questions.